Film is often described as immortal light sealed in time, untouched by age. Yet, what happens when the film you remember, the one that lived in your head for years, no longer matches the version the world now recognizes in sci-fi, where reality is fluid and perception bends, the archive seems just as unstable. Frames shift. Dialogue mutates. An edit appears where none should exist. A scene once vivid becomes a rumor. And suddenly the movie you swear you saw becomes a ghost. Some viewers recall Blade Runner with narration that no longer exists in modern releases. Others insist the Terminator once felt dirtier, heavier grain rattling like metal. Fans of Predator talk about pores and grime now smoothed away until the jungle looks like plastic. Stories spread like urban legend. Someone owns a VHS Laserdisc, a theatrical memory that contradicts every remaster available. The internet debates it endlessly, but the archive remains silent.
Studios call these updates improvements, restoration, enhancement, preservation.
But preserving is not rewriting. When T trades weapons for walkie-talkies, when Star Wars alters a single trigger pull and shifts the morality of a hero, we aren't seeing history cleaned, we're seeing it rearrange. Each cut, each color grade, each vanishing shot shapes the viewer's reality, not by adding more, but by removing what used to be true. Maybe nothing was lost. Maybe everything was. Or maybe cinema, like memory, is never fixed, only rewritten until the original becomes myth. Tonight, we open the reels that changed when no one was looking, films that slipped into new forms, leaving audiences to wonder whether the past is gone or merely overwritten. If your memory and the movie no longer match, which one was real? 1 Solaris, 1972. Some prints of Solaris play like a dream that refuses to end. Others feel like a dream someone woke from too quickly. The longest cut stretches time like grief, silence expands, corridors breathe, and the ocean of memory moves without urgency.
Shorter international edits remove minutes like muscle trading introspection for pace.
Tarkovsky intended slowness as gravity. Reduction lightens the weight, but at the cost of soul. Searching for the real Solaris is like searching memory for something half-remembered. Archivists track runtimes like coordinates. Festival prints show one duration, early home media show another, and some broadcasts show a version no longer archived anywhere official. Preservation becomes speculation. If a film built on memory exists in multiple memories, then which one survived, the one we can watch or the one that lived inside those who saw it decades ago? Maybe Solaris was always meant to drift between forms like thought, like loss. To Brazil, 1985. Two endings stand like parallel universes. In one, hope triumphs. In the other, hope is only hallucination before collapse. The studio's cut rewards escape and imagination, offering comfort like a warm curtain closing. Gilliam's cut crushes that comfort, leaving viewers inside the machine with no exit. A fantasy becomes critique only when it refuses relief. The conflict behind these edits became myth. Secret screenings. Editorial battles. A director fighting his own distributor. Decades later, both endings circulate, sometimes without warning, of which you will receive. A viewer may watch Brazil and believe rebellion wins. Another may leave shaken, convinced the world consumes resistance whole. Streaming platforms rarely clarify which version they host. Physical restorations help, but availability is fluid. History bends depending on which disc or digital file you choose. This is more than editing, it is ideological divergence. One cut teaches hope. The other teaches futility. Which one is true? Maybe both. Maybe neither.
Cinema fractured itself and audiences inherited the split.
3. Blade Runner 1982. Blade Runner may be the clearest example of cinema that refuses to stay still. There is not one film, there are many. Theatrical prints carried narration like scaffolding guiding audiences through neon rain. Later cuts stripped that voice away, letting silence become architecture. Then came the final cut, inserting the unicorn dream, like a code, a symbol that changes everything. Did Deckard escape, or was escape another illusion? Each cut answers differently, not by adding scenes, but by shifting context. Color also mutates. Early releases look industrial, tarnished metal, cigarette yellow haze. The final cut bathes everything in deeper greens, like circuitry breathing under skin. Moments linger longer or shorter depending on which timeline you inhabit. A slow walk becomes meditative in one version and efficient in another. Nostalgia now requires specificity. Which Blade Runner are you nostalgic for? Some remember a version less polished, grittier, slower in a way that felt accidental alive. Others only know the refined iteration that moves like intentional clockwork. Both are authentic and neither is fixed. The film is now a living organism, adapting and regrowing after every restoration. A story about artificial identity has become a film with multiple identities. If memory defines truth, and each viewer saw a different truth, then Blade Runner is not just revised, it is fractal. 4. Star Wars: A New Hope 1977. Han did not hesitate in early screenings, he fired first. That single moment shaped his identity: smuggler, survivor, morally gray. But later edits reshaped the scene, so Greedo shoots two shifting character from ruthless to reactive. Fans still fight over it, not because of a beam of light, but because one edit rewrote a legend. New creatures shimmer into frames once empty. Textures cleaned. Audio remixed. Tatooine brightened from dust-choked wasteland into warmer desert glow. The galaxy grows shinier, friendlier. Some call it improvement. Others call it revisionism. The original theatrical cut is nearly inaccessible, legally pushing preservation into the hands of private collectors. To watch the unaltered film is nearly rebellion. If one myth can be reauthored, then canon is not fixed, it's curated. A future generation may only know the version where Han reacts instead of acts. History becomes editable. Heroism becomes negotiable. And what is cinema if not memory, and what is memory if it can be replaced? 5ET. The Extraterrestrial 1982. When guns became walkie-talkies, it seemed small, almost funny, but the change rewired tone. The original captured real fear: children running from authority, danger visible in steel. The altered release softens the threat, turning tension into inconvenience. Later Spielberg allowed the original version to return, but both edits remain in circulation, forming two memories of childhood that cannot be reconciled. Some who grew up in the 80s remember the crack of gunmetal in Moonlight, the panic sharp enough to taste. Younger viewers recall handheld radios and kinder eyes. Neither is wrong. Both versions exist. But a single replaced prop says something enormous. A story about risk became a story about safety. Coming-of-age myth was nudged into something gentler. Even effects changed. Digital animation slipped into places practical texture once lived. Fingers glow cleaner, ships shimmer brighter, suburbia looks more curated. Magic gains polish, but loses weight. Nostalgia becomes reconstruction. When a film built on wonder can be softened decades after birth, what memory is being preserved, the one we lived or the one chosen for us? 6. The Terminator 1984. Some fans insist the Terminator they saw in the 1980s was not the same one preserved today. Older VHS recordings carry traces of extended moments, slightly longer terror in the tech noir shootout, a few extra seconds of metallic violence breaths that felt unscripted. Modern cuts sharpen clarity but seem to trim brutality as if the film evolved into a cleaner memory of itself. Noise reduction removes grain, but maybe also removes fear. The future was once grimy and cold. Now it looks too sleek, too digitally repaired. Audio differences fuel debate further. Early releases feature heavier gunfire and harsher ambient rumble industrial like machinery grinding bone. Remasters smooth these edges, dialogue floats clearer, but the world feels less dangerous. Some shots appear rearranged in pacing, not altered overtly, but timed differently enough to disturb those who swear they remember more rust, more panic, more sweat. Collectors slow frame archived tapes searching for proof. One claims Sarah's final factory sprint lasted longer. Another remembers sparks falling like rain. But studio masters provide no confirmation, only the files that survive the transition into digital custody. If evidence contradicts memory, is memory wrong, or was something quietly overwritten? A story about machines changing history now exists with history changed itself. Maybe preservation polished too far. Maybe the rawness simply faded like muscle turning to scar. Or maybe somewhere sits a reel that proves the past was not imagined, just replaced. 7. Aliens, 1986. In some memories, Aliens is a relentless chase, no room to breathe, no space for grief. In others, it's a textured war about motherhood trauma and policy failures. The special edition restored cutscenes expanding lore-century guns, firing blind colony life before the fall Ripley's daughter waiting at home. The theatrical cut slices those moments away, turning empathy into velocity. Both versions redefine each other. Fans debate which is definitive. Some argue that added depth strengthens emotional stakes. Others claim momentum dies when reflection intrudes. Collectors compare disc releases like scholars studying scripture, theatrical V's, extended pacing V's atmosphere. Over time, streaming platforms often favor the longer cut, slowly erasing the version that once hit theaters like gunfire. Which story is Aliens the fight without context, or the fight shaped by loss? One version claws at survival. The other mourns while fighting. If a film can gain or surrender soul depending on runtime, then truth becomes runtime itself. 8. The Abyss, 1989. Which Abyss did you experience first? The constrained theatrical dive or the expansive special edition theatrical cuts emphasize pressure confrontation, the ocean as claustrophobic intelligence? The extended version offers new breathing room, wider character arcs, added emotional resonance, and a more hopeful interpretation of alien contact. What was once dread becomes negotiation. What was once survival becomes message. This difference reshapes memory. The original pacing suffocates like water in the lungs. The longer cut feels like rising back to air. Both versions are true, yet they behave like separate philosophies. Laserdisc and early DVD releases reveal scenes absent from modern streams, while newer editions restore them as canon. A loop has formed removal-return reinterpretation. Some believe the theatrical cut was pressure from the studio, a streamlined shell to maintain momentum. Others say the special edition indulges too much clarity, replacing mystery with manifesto. Who is right depends on which timeline you entered first. First exposure becomes truth, and everything after feels revision. Two experiences, two emotional endings. A single film that behaves like tidal water changing shape under different moons. If cinema is a deep ocean, the abyss proves depth is not fixed. It depends on where you choose to descend. 9 Event Horizon 1997. There is a version of Event Horizon that many swear was darker, bloodier, almost unbearable. Early viewers describe flashes of torture longer than the cut we know today, bodies torn by gravity and madness, surreal imagery lingering instead of stuttering. Yet modern releases show only fragments, a few frames of hell whispered and gone. Paramount once claimed missing footage was unrecoverable, but fans cling to stories of longer work prints screened quietly before studio intervention. Every forum thread sounds like testimony to an apparition. Some archival fragments resurfaced on decayed VHS and warped reels, grains soaked like evidence dragged from fire. They hint at a version where despair lingered longer, where screams echoed like scripture. But restoration of these pieces proved impossible, or so we're told. So the film exists as two ghosts, the one we can watch and the one the audience remembers. Collectors hunt relentlessly. Crew interviews contradict each other. Rumors claim a near-complete cut lies in private hands untouched. Others insist memory exaggerates what was never there. But the persistence of recollection shared across thousands feels too coordinated for coincidence. Event Horizon has become a missing person case, no grave, no closure, only belief. A film about a ship lost to another dimension now suffers the same fate, split into timelines. One version survived, the other is remembered, and perhaps neither is whole. If the horrors we recall are stronger than the ones available to see, does that mean the real film exists only in memory, or did we witness something that was quietly erased? 10 Close Encounters of the Third Kind 1977. Few films illustrate the fragility of cinematic history like Close Encounters. 3 official cuts survive the 1977 theatrical release, the 1980 special edition, and the 1998 director's cut. Each alters emotional architecture. The special edition reveals the interior of the alien ship, transforming mystery into spectacle. The director's cut retracts that revelation, restoring ambiguity but rearranging other pieces of rhythm and tone. The story shifts not by plot changes, but by expectation. Ask two people who watched the film decades apart, and you may hear two different truths. One remembers awe blooming like sunrise doors opening toward revelation. The other remembers dread and unanswered questions, an encounter defined by silence rather than clarity. Both are correct. Both versions exist. But which represents the film's soul? Modern streaming rotates editions without explanation, meaning a viewer's first contact might be spectacle or uncertainty, depending on platform and date. That randomness shapes belief. It rewrites history passively through access instead of authorship. Collectors track runtimes like coordinates to alternate timelines.
Scholars debate whether showing the ship's interior weakens myth or fulfills promise.
Spielberg himself revised his stance over time, suggesting even the creator's memory evolved.
Contact with the unknown is no longer fixed. It depends on which cut greets you when the lights go down. If a story about first contact can change form without warning, perhaps the real encounter is not with aliens, but with the realization that cinema is never finished. 11 THX 1138 1971. THX 1138 exists like a before and after image of cinema. The original release locked viewers inside a sterile underground world minimal, oppressive human voices echoing through empty white geometry. Then came later editions expanded with CGI infrastructure, wider tunnels, digital crowds, and new cityscapes. A story once suffocating became spacious. A nightmare of confinement became strangely majestic, as if someone edited fear into wonder. Many argue this modernization diluted intent. The first cut felt manufactured by authority, cold, industrial, inescapable. The revised version looks engineered by imagination instead. Clean lines replace grit. Artificial life populates spaces meant to feel abandoned. Silence, once carved like blade, becomes coated with ambient detail. The edges soften and the dystopia feels less like prison and more like simulation. Lucas described the update as restoration enhancement completion, but enhancement can overwrite texture as easily as preserve it. When only the altered version circulates widely, new generations meet a future that is no longer cruel but curious. The original survives in scattered prints and fan transfers, preserved like contraband proof that the world once felt smaller. A film designed to trap the audience has been opened up. But in expanding space, did it lose pressure? Did it lose the suffocation that made it unforgettable? Two experiences remain, one that crushes, one that glides. Which one was meant to endure? 12 Solaris 1972. Some viewers remember Solaris as a long drifting meditation, slow as orbit, heavy as grief. Others recall a shorter experience, nearly 30 minutes lighter, as if sorrow itself had been edited out. Multiple runtimes circulated across decades, especially in international prints, and each version reshaped how the film felt. In the longest cut, silence expands like ocean tide. Thought has time to ache. In shorter editions, the narrative compresses reflection, becomes movement, and Tarkovsky's dream feels trimmed for convenience rather than preserved for meaning. Which is the real film, the one people endured in theaters, or the one distributed later for pacing? Film scholars hunt lost footage like archaeologists searching for bones of an extinct creature. Some reels appear at festivals, some vanish into rumor, some exist only on aging VHS tapes warped by time. Digital restorations attempt reconciliation but never fully agree. A film about memory now lives with fractured memory of itself, contradicting the idea of permanence. The irony is almost cosmic. A story about the instability of human recollection becomes unstable through its own preservation history. Every cut offers different gravity. The full version suffocates you slowly. The shorter one lets you breathe too soon. Both are Solaris, and yet neither alone is complete. If time can reshape a film as time reshapes memory, then perhaps the lost minutes are not gone. They exist like ghosts seen by some, forgotten by others. And maybe that ambiguity was always the point. 13 Brazil 1985. There are two endings to Brazil, not alternate content, but alternate meaning. Terry Gilliam's vision collapses into bleakness, leaving the protagonist broken under a machinery-ruled world. The studio-approved cut transforms that tragedy into triumph. Love wins, hope blooms, reality bends kindly instead of crushing. One version bruises, the other forgives. A dystopia becomes dreamlike simply because someone nipped a thread and rewove the conclusion. The battle behind this edit has become legend. Gilliam showed his own cut in secret, seeking critics like allies in a rebellion. Universal defended the optimistic ending, arguing audiences needed comfort. Comfort over truth. Softness over scars. The film split into realities, two futures sharing a single past. Which one reached viewers depended not on artistic intent, but distribution rights and market belief. Decades later, the fracture remains. Criterion guards Gilliam's nightmare like scripture. Other releases circulate the softened dream. Streaming rotates versions unpredictably, exposing some viewers to despair and others to reassurance without warning. Two worlds coexist, both canon, neither absolute. But beneath the debate lies something stranger. Brazil itself predicted this. A story about systems rewriting identity has now been rewritten by the very system that distributed it. A dystopia about control became a case study in controlled art. If endings can be swapped for comfort, was the warning ever truly heard, or did the film become the thing it tried to expose, history modified until the audience forgets where the fear was supposed to land? Two films exist, both true, both false, depending on which one you survived. 14 Predator 1987. Older audiences describe Predator as something raw, a film that sweated. Jungle heat clung to the frame grain, moved like insects under moonlight, and every close-up carried the texture of skin pores, grit, exhaustion. But modern restorations polish that chaos into clarity, smoothing faces, softening edges, turning flesh into plastic and soil into matte color. The hunters still hunt, the soldiers still fall, but danger feels strangely clean, a sanitized memory of something once feral. Some say this is progress, high-definition detail, noise removed, image preserved. Others call it erasure. If a film set in mud and blood looks sterilized, then is it still the same story? Early DVDs and Laserdisc transfers suggest a world more human sweat, darker shadows, heavier the unpolished reality of men dying under trees. Compare them to the remaster and the difference feels uncanny. Jungle replaced by glossy Polish terror traded for aesthetic. Screenshots circulate like smuggled artifacts. Fans debate whether modern sharpening scrubs soul instead of restoring it. Was grit noise or narrative was grainy a flaw, or the film's heartbeat? When technology repairs too much, it repairs character out of existence. A creature once hidden in blur emerges clearly, and clarity makes it smaller, less myth, more costume. If remastering alters atmosphere, does tension remain true, or do we lose the sweat of survival one pixel at a time? Some films are action. Predator was humidity, heat, weight. Now it is crispness defined, clean, ironically less alive. Progress can preserve, but it can also replace. When the jungle stops suffocating, the hunt changes. And so does the memory of fear. 15 The Matrix 1999. Some films change over time because technology evolves. The Matrix changed because perception did. Many who watched the original theatrical release remember a colder, more neutral image, a world that looked real, flawed, recognizably ours. Only inside the simulation did the color shift a faint green tint, signaling artificiality without announcing itself. But modern releases, especially Blu-ray restorations, amplify that green so intensely that the divide between real and unreal becomes explicit instead of suggested. Subtlety dissolves into certainty. This shift doesn't rewrite plot, yet it rewrites sensation. Scenes once grounded in physical texture now look coded, glossy, almost algorithmic. Neo's apartment appears less like a human space and more like a rendered box. The city loses grit, gains simulation sheen. Even memories of the film begin to change, not through forgetting, but through replacement. If the only version most people can access is the recolored one, then the original reality fades not because the world forgot it, but because the archive overwrote it. Debates continue endlessly. Some argue the new palette matches the sequels, improving consistency. Others insist it erases the one thing the first film did best: uncertainty. Instead of wondering whether we were inside the Matrix, we're told, visually, constantly, quiet doubt becomes loud direction. Maybe these changes were corrections. Maybe they were enhancements. Or maybe they are proof that history can be modified until original truth becomes a rumor. When a movie about simulated worlds is itself altered across timelines, the question grows sharper: do we remember the Matrix, or do we remember a version of it that the present no longer supports? If the future can rewrite the past without permission, was the Matrix theory fiction or prophecy disguised as film? BONUSFACT Dark City 1998. Some people remember Dark City beginning with a whisper of confusion, no guidance, no rules, just darkness and streets, shifting like memory under a knife. Others recall a voice explaining everything before the mystery could bloom. The theatrical cut included exposition up front, revealing strangers' experiments manipulated identity. The director's cut removed that narration, entirely leaving viewers lost in the maze, forced to question reality instead of receiving it like instruction. 2 openings. 2 interpretations. 1 film split at its spine. The version with narration feels like being handed a map. The version without it feels like waking up without a name, which fittingly is the heart of the story. One edit treats the audience like witness. The other treats them like prisoner. Tone changes not through scenes removed, but through silence restored. Mystery thrives when no one speaks. What makes Dark City uncanny is not just the difference, it's the doubt. Many cannot recall which cut they saw first. Did the voice greet you, or did the world swallow you? Did you learn truth, or discover it? The memory of viewing is unstable, rewired by revisions across discs, broadcasts, and streaming platforms. A film about stolen memories now has stolen versions of itself. Collectors claim the director's cut is pure intention, a film allowed to breathe, to disorient. Others argue the voice over-strengthens structure, like a storyteller warning you before doors lock behind you. No consensus exists, only recollection and shadow. If identity can be edited, a film can too. And when 2 beginnings exist, both are true, both false, both real, depending on which night you fell into the city. A movie about memory manipulation became a memory manipulated by time, maybe the most fitting fate it could ever have. Maybe the films didn't change, maybe we did. Or maybe the archive shifted quietly behind us, rewriting what we thought was fixed. These movies exist in multiple forms now, like parallel timelines stacked inside a projector. One memory says it happened differently. One master file insists otherwise. So who do we believe, the real or the recollection? Tell me in the comments. Which version did you grow up with, and is cinema being preserved or redesigned while we sleep? Your answer might reveal whether history is stable or already rewritten.